On today's show, we are talking about Kirk Ferentz, who is about to break Woody Hayes' record. The game, I think, just got more relevant. And what happens to Michigan on June 6th? We're going to get into all of that and some more of my thoughts and opinions coming up next. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Big Ten Team Rivalry Show, where normally we have a Michigan update for you. I've actually got some stories from around the Big Ten, although it all kind of relates back to Michigan anyway, so maybe that's not such a big deal. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is Kirk Ferentz, and I got to put the glasses on so I can read this because my eyes are shot. I got Lindy's. Lindy's came out the other day, and I went out and bought that. Still waiting on Phil Steele, but I guess Phil Steele's doesn't come out until July 4th, so can't do that one yet. But there's some interesting stuff I found so far in Lindy's magazine. The first thing that popped out at me was Kirk Ferentz. Now, I thought Kirk Ferentz was going to retire after season 25. Kirk Ferentz has been around the Big Ten since 1999. He is actually one of the oldest tenured coaches. He is actually the oldest tenured coach. According to Lindy's, he has 6 years on the next guy behind him, who happens to be, who was that Mike Gundry at Oklahoma State. Kirk Ferentz has been at, this will be his 27th year. I'm sorry, this will be his 27th year at Iowa. And that makes him the oldest tenured coach, not necessarily the oldest coach, but the oldest active coach in college football. And like I said, I thought he was going to retire after year 25, but he didn't. But now there's an interesting twist to this as I ramble on for a little while. Sorry about that. Thanks for hanging in there. He is about to break Woody Hayes' record. Now, Woody Hayes coached Ohio State for 27 years and coached 276 games. Out of that 276 games, which I try to remember the dates that Woody Hayes coached, which I think was something like 1955 to 1978, somewhere in there. He had 205 wins to 61 losses and 10 ties, totaling for 276 games. Well, Kirk Ferentz, at the end of last season, racked up his 204th win, which means his very first game could be his 205th win, and he could tie Woody Hayes' winning record. Now, he's not going to tie Woody Hayes for winning percentage because Ferentz has actually, his current record is 204 to 123 to 1. So he's actually coached 328 games. But certainly he's going to have he's not going to have a 0-win season. So he's going to break Woody Hayes' winning record. And in fact, Woody Hayes' record of 205 wins is actually the Big Ten record. For a minute, I was thinking, oh, wait a minute, what about Joe Paterno? But most of Joe Paterno's wins came before Penn State joined the Big Ten. So that's why that works. Kirk Ferentz has seen a lot of changes in the world, let alone college football. It was actually, Google was not even a thing when he became a coach at Iowa. I think that was the year Google was invented. He had to fire his own son. He has seen the changes in the BCS and the current setup, and he could be, I don't know how much longer he's going to coach, but certainly it would be a cool thing to tack onto his record book if he could actually beat Woody Hayes' record. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting one. Really, that one doesn't really have anything to do with Michigan. It's a cool stat, and I think I have sort of this affinity for Iowa as being sort of Michigan's fourth biggest rival. In my opinion, you got to start with Michigan State as the biggest rival because it's in state. And that state rivalry is always the biggest rivalry, although I know that the Ohio State rivalry, which I'm going to put at number 2, actually has better games historically. But then you've got Minnesota because of the Little Brown Jug, and I think after that, you've got to call it Iowa. At least to me, I think you got to call it Iowa. So Iowa has always been a tough opponent for Michigan. It's always been a good game. Always. I guess that Big Ten championship in 23 was kind of boring, but typically, Iowa is a very strong team and puts up a fight. Even in their worst seasons, they can still beat you up pretty bad, and it's a good game. It's a good defensive battle. I mean, it has to be for Iowa. That's about all they do is play defense. Anyway, speaking of games, I think the game between Michigan and Ohio State just got more relevant, and here's why. So this year we've got Lindy's is calling this a gargantuan matchup between Texas and Ohio State. Ohio State's very first game this season, Saturday, August 30th, is going to be against Texas. They wanted to move it into prime time. Texas said, no, we want to keep it at noon. That game is going to be at noon. And if the rankings hold up, I believe right now I got to pull it up again, that Texas and Ohio State are in the top 5 together. They could even be considered number 1 and 2 in a lot of cases. But let's look at what we have here as far as they should have it on the rankings on here. Oh no, this is last year still. Oh, I just saw that article. Okay, I'm going to pause and I'm going to come back and I'm going to have that for you because I want to talk about that. Okay, here we go. Got the article. So right now this is what the ESPN FPI has done. They've got Texas at number 1. They've got Ohio State, believe it or not, all the way down to number 4. They've got Alabama above Ohio State. That just seems wrong. I don't know why, but I don't want to get into the top 25 right now. I just wanted to talk about Texas and Ohio State. You could almost say, and I think it's probably more reasonable to say, in effect, Lindy's, I believe, puts Ohio State at number 2 or number 3. So let's say the Texas and Ohio State game is number 1 versus number 2. That already makes it a huge game. It already means that whole waiting for the non-conference schedule to end so we can get into some real football, that's done for Ohio State. They're going to play Texas. This is going to be big. This is going to be bad. This is going to be a great game to start the season, and it's going to be huge. And I think I prefer it to be at noon. I like noon games. That's me. Although I like the noon games when it's cold and the teams are just sliding all over the place. But at any rate, so Texas is playing Ohio State. Both teams are title contenders. Both teams are in the top 4, according to the ESPN FPI. But for all of that, the discussion has been for the game against Michigan and Ohio State. Does it even matter anymore? Because you can lose that game and still get into the playoffs. And obviously what Ohio State did, you can still win a national championship. So now let's back this up a little bit, because Texas is not a pushover non-conference team. It's entirely possible that Ohio State is going to lose to Texas. It's entirely possible that Penn State, that is also a title contender, could beat Ohio State. So if Ohio State goes into the Michigan game with 2 losses, the Michigan game is now very relevant because they now have to beat Michigan to get into those playoffs. I can't imagine that Ohio State is going to be able to get into the playoffs if they've got 3 losses. I don't think that's going to happen. Now I can't remember off the top of my head if anybody had 3 losses last year. I don't think they did. I think you didn't have anything more than a 2-loss team. But regardless of that, the general story has been that the game doesn't matter because Ohio State could lose that game, be 10-2, still get into the playoffs. If they lose to Texas, if they lose to Penn State, that Michigan game is going to be more relevant. Now, will they lose to Texas and will they lose to Penn State? So that's the other big part of that argument. And I don't know for sure. I would say, I'm looking at it, I almost think that Texas is a loss, and then Penn State, they'll probably beat Penn State just because I can't imagine Ohio State losing to Penn State. I think that would actually almost be more embarrassing than losing to Michigan. But let's say Ohio State loses to Texas or loses to Penn State. Will they get into the playoffs if they can't beat Michigan too? Because there's an awful lot of talk out there that they're not going to beat Michigan. That makes them a 3-loss team. Actually, let's back up though. Here's another question. What happens if Ohio State beats Texas? So one of those long-standing axioms is that it's very difficult to beat the same team twice in the same season. So does that mean that it would be good for Ohio State to lose to Texas just in case they play them in the playoffs? Because what happens if they beat Texas in the regular season and then they end up facing Texas in the playoffs and they lose to Texas? Obviously they're out because the playoffs are sudden death. So there's a number of factors going into this that make this Ohio State season very interesting, and they make that Texas-Ohio State game very interesting because if they win, will they lose to Texas in the playoffs? If they lose, does that make the Michigan game more relevant? I think it does. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think those are some interesting scenarios to play with as far as Ohio State seasons go, and even Michigan season, because now with Michigan's season, Michigan obviously they need to do better than they did last year. Last year was 7-5 in the regular season, so Michigan has to radically change that. They've got to go 10-2. There's a number of pundits suggesting that Michigan can go 10-2. Beating Ohio State is obviously a plus no matter what happens, but that's the interesting side of that matchup for Ohio State against Texas, and I'm curious as to what you guys think. Let me know what your opinion is on those scenarios. The last thing I want to talk about, I apologize if I'm rushing through this. I could probably slow down, but I don't know. For some reason, I'm a little amped up tonight, I guess. The last thing I wanted to talk about then is what happens to Michigan on June 6th. Right off the top of my head, well, I shouldn't say off the top of my head. I don't have any insiders. I don't have any inside information. I don't know anybody at the NCAA or even at Michigan. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm just going to give you my opinion the way everybody else is, because nobody else knows what's going to happen either. But here's the possibilities as far as I see it. And you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. Am I being too soft? Am I being too hard on Michigan? What do you think? What's your opinion? But the questions I see is, will the Sharon Moore suspension stand? As you know, Michigan has already self-suspended Sharon Moore for 2 games. The Nebraska game and not the Oklahoma game. Oh, nuts. I knew I should have brought these things up. All right, pause. I'm going to look it up real quick. Okay, we're back. Central Michigan. I should have known that. They've already suspended Sharon Moore for the Central Michigan game and the Nebraska game. Will that stand? Will the NCAA is not bound to it. So if the NCAA decides that they don't like the 2-game suspension, they could throw some more suspensions on there. If the suspension does stand, my opinion on that is I would think that if that suspension stands, if the NCAA comes in and says, no, that's good enough for Sharon Moore, I almost wonder if that means they had already worked out a deal with the NCAA. So it wasn't necessarily a self-suspension, although Michigan is allowed to call it a self-suspension. But if it stands, I think that presupposes they worked something out with the NCAA. If it doesn't stand, what happens to Sharon Moore? As I've said before, I don't know why Sharon wouldn't get the same punishment as Jesse Minter, which was a 1-year show cause. If that happens, can Michigan show a show cause to let Sharon Moore continue to coach? And then in that case, is he he looks in the wrong direction and he's out? Or if he gets a 1-year suspension, does Michigan fight that? Is Sharon Moore just automatically? It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. And for stuff that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But if that stands, it does seem like that means they worked something out with the NCAA. If it doesn't stand, maybe you're looking at a 4-game suspension. I don't think it would be a 6-game suspension, but I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on there. The other question is, will wins be vacated? That doesn't seem to be on the table at all. You've already got, opinions are all over the map on this one. And again, I don't know for sure because I don't have any inside information, but I got to go based on what I've seen from these other teams when they get wins vacated. It looks like wins are vacated when there are ineligible players played. You have to prove that something happened on the field that changed the game. And in this case, Connor Stalions having a couple of plays doesn't change the game. Because there's no guarantee that the other teams even used those plays. So yes, it would still be wrong. Yes, you should still get punished for that. But if it doesn't change the play on the field, then you don't get wins vacated. FGCU just got 82 wins vacated from various sports because they played a bunch of ineligible players. Ohio State, back in the whole tattoo gate thing, it wasn't the tattoos. It was the fact that players who did that should have been suspended and they weren't. And so ineligible players were played, and that's why wins got vacated. So it doesn't look like there are any players implicated in this in any way. So I don't think that wins will be vacated. And then you also have President Baker of the NCAA saying Michigan won the Natty fair and square. If I know some people have tried to say, well, he's not on the infractions committee, but he's the president of the NCAA. If the president of the NCAA is spouting off about things that he has no business saying, I mean, talk about a lack of institutional control. It just doesn't seem likely that he would come out and say that unless he already knew the infractions committee wasn't going to vacate wins. So I don't think any wins are going to be vacated. Bookmark it. Let me know. Maybe if I'm wrong, but I just don't see how that's going to happen based on what we already know. Another thing is, will there be fines? This is where I think, I think there will definitely be fines. I feel like that's a virtual guarantee that Michigan is going to get fines of some sort because of, if for nothing else, than the resources involved in the NCAA investigation. So the main infractions for Michigan stem from Harbaugh not being upfront with the NCAA, Sharon Moore not being upfront with the NCAA, Jesse Minter and Partridge not being upfront with the NCAA. So they kind of caused the investigation to be more than what it needed to be. And so that's time, that's resources taken from other things that the NCAA could be doing. So I can see that the NCAA would come in and fine them to basically cover those expenses. It's a lot like if you're taken to court and you prove your side of it, you can make the person taking you to court pay all of your court expenses. It's that kind of thing. I think that's a definite possibility that Michigan will face those fines. And then, of course, Michigan is a wealthy school, so they'll look at the fines, they'll pay them, done. Moving on from there. The other question I had is, what's going to happen to Connor Stalions? Connor Stalions still has this dream of being the head coach at Michigan. Is he going to be able to do that? And I'm going to go bold on this one. I think Connor Stalions could be looking at a 4-year show cause. I don't know that it'll matter, just like the 4-year show cause doesn't matter with Harbaugh, but a 4-year show cause to Connor, and then maybe Michigan hires him in, I guess that would be about 2030 that Michigan could actually hire him to be an assistant coach. Although my one thought on that is, will Sharon Moore want him to be part of the Michigan coaching staff? Because it seems like he and Sharon Moore don't get along very well. Maybe that's changed. Maybe they've worked things out. I don't know. But that's the way I would see it. Why don't I see the hammer coming? Am I just a delusional Michigan fan? Maybe I am. I don't know. But I don't see the hammer coming for a variety of reasons. One, no one is hedging their bets on Michigan. All of the major pundits, all of the major outlets, they're not putting Michigan aside and discounting them because they know that Michigan is going to be playing this year, and they're going to be a team fighting for a championship. So if that's the case, it doesn't seem like you're going to have like a post-bowl ban or a postseason bowl ban or anything like that. You're not going to get wins vacated. Nobody's hedging their bets on Michigan. So that's one reason. There's been no recruiting fall off. In fact, it looks like Michigan's recruiting has actually been doing really well lately. And you would think that if the players are coming in saying, but we're not even going to be in to play any bowl games or playoff games or anything, and Sharon Moore is going to get fired. So if all of that were the case, why would these players be coming to Michigan? I mean, you could say Michigan's lying to them, but they've got access to social media. They've got access to the news. They know what's going on as well as anybody. So if that's not happening, then, and there's no recruiting fall off, then I don't think that's why I don't think the hammer is coming. Also, I guess I'm doubling up on this one, but no major sports outlet is ignoring Michigan for 2025. So you've got pundits who aren't hedging their bets on Michigan. There's been no recruiting fall off, and the major sports outlets are not ignoring Michigan for this upcoming season. So that's why I don't think the hammer is coming. But you guys can let me know in the comments. The other thing I want to tell you about is we actually have a video out called "How Michigan Cheated." It's kind of a troll video. I think if you're a Michigan fan, I know you'll love it. If you're not a Michigan fan, you might hate it, but watch it anyway. It's fun. And I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Also, we are looking at getting back into our live stream. That should be coming back weekly pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. And otherwise, you guys have a good evening, and that is going to do it for us tonight. Have fun. enjoy the upcoming. Well, there's nothing upcoming. You know what? Just have a good evening. We'll talk to you soon.